Okay, welcome back to our final project. So this will be my last video. Thank you for your patience, and I want to thank everybody for participating in the class. I know it's been sort of a tedious challenge at times with all the minutia, especially the VBA and the access. I hope that you're enjoying the final project. Um, so before I get on to since it is my final video, just wanted to show you my dog real quick. So this is my Phoebe that passed away the other day. She was the sweetest dog ever, and I'm very sad, but I'm also grateful to have shared our lives together for nearly 15 years. So anyway, if I can keep from crying, I want to talk about the final part of the project. So we've created this website. So let me go. I've logged back into Google Sites, and in the first video, I'd created this sort of shell of a website for my COVID analysis. And if I go back into it, I go to the home page. I'm not sure if this is exactly where I left off, but I put in a little text box for the just to specify my data source and the date. Um, so now I want to add images. So there's a number of different ways that we could move our data from Excel to um, to the website. Ideally, we would have a live feed, meaning as we got, I wouldn't need to put this caveat in here of the date. So the best way would be is if we had we made our charts dynamic so that as new data rolled in, they would continue to update. Um, so we're kind of limited in the technology that we have access to for the class, and we haven't learned Google Sheets. We're more familiar with just using Excel. So I decided just to make it a static website for the time being. But just know that ideally you would have a live data set instead of one that is limited to the existing data at the time you made the website. Um, there are a number of different ways to get your charts from Excel over to a website. You could use an imaging tool as an in-between thing. So I could select this chart um, and copy it into an image tool, save it as an image, and then upload it over to our image in Google Sites. Another on the Mac, there's a Google has this result. On the Mac, they have their own snipping tool where you can do a screenshot based on whatever section. I'm using a PC, so I'm going to be using the snipping tool. So I'm going to click on my start button and search for snip. I'll select the snipping tool, and you can see I've already begun this, but I'm going to select a new snip. Apparently Microsoft has a new snip and sketch tool. I'm not familiar with it, and this one will work just fine. So I'm just going to try to snip the original. Before I do this, I'm going to cancel out of this real quick. And I'm going to go to the view of the worksheet, and I'm going to uncheck the grid lines. The reason is because if I go beyond, if I accidentally select something a little bit beyond the range of the chart, then it's going to look a little bit nicer if I don't have the grid lines in there. So now I'll go back to the snipping tool. And I'll select new. And I'm just going to grab this first chart. And I'm going to save it. I'm noticing I'm in my pictures, and I'm going to use this cases by date, and I'm going to save. I've already saved one by that date, by that name. But now I'm going to go back over to my website and click on Images, Upload, select my image file. You may need to do some scrolling to find the right folder. And it makes it really tiny, so I'm going to resize it here until I have everything visible on the screen. Um, I need to make it a little smaller just so the legend shows up. So it may take a little bit of trial and error to get the image just right. But then I would do the same thing with the next chart. So I'm going to scroll down to the number of deaths. I'm going to reopen the snipping tool, select New. And I'll select the number of deaths. I'm going to scrap that one because I had like the interior of it selected. I'm going to go back to Excel and I'm just going to click away. Go back to the snipping tool and click New. And I'm going to try to carefully select just this chart, but make sure I have everything in it. And again, there's a kind of messed up again because I had this bottom part of it doesn't look good. But just in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and save this as deaths by date. I've already saved something with that name, so I'll just replace it. So pretending that this was a clean snip without these bottom shading in, ideally I would want to scroll up a little or maybe even put some space between these so that I can more easily snip this without anything extraneous in it. But I would want to upload an image again with my new chart, and I would want to size it so that everything shows up, including the scale on the left or the right. Ideally, I would try and make them exactly the same size. Okay, and then I would go on to the second page where I have my analysis of deaths versus cases. I could insert some text where I say the purpose of this analysis is to compare the number of cases versus the number of deaths in Ontario. And I might put another source, Johns Hopkins 19. And then I would proceed to select this chart. I would get rid of the grid lines again. And I would go back to my snipping tool. Select New. And I would save my image as deaths versus cases. It's a good idea not to put any spaces in the image name because it will ultimately be a unique address on the web, and the web doesn't like spaces in address names. It would still publish okay, but there'd be some odd things in the image URL. So anyway, I would upload that image once again. Size it to make sure everything shows up, including the axis labels. That one turned out pretty good, pretty quickly. And so I would just continue on including the next chart. I would slice my correlations and also the percentage of deaths. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to complete all of that, but you would have other images down here. And whether you chose to like kind of rekey the correlation results directly in text boxes or just do another image slice is sort of up to you. And then lastly, I would go over to the pages and insert some conclusions and commentary. So I would click on the text box and I would type various conclusions. And I'm going to kind of leave this up to you. I might have a section on conclusions where I might say there's a very close relationship between the number of cases and the number of deaths, that they tend to be linearly correlated, and I might include my prediction for the number of deaths in the middle of May based on the percentage. And then, so I would have that, and then I might also have some limitations or caveats or something like that, and say like data is limited to time frame up to April 29th. And then I would also conclude that my data in Ontario tended to be pretty linear, but the correlations may not hold once the data takes on another shape. So for example, once the data becomes U-shaped, like we all hope it will be, or totally flattened out, since these are cumulative cases, it would be kind of a, I don't know, sort of a data would trend upward and then become flat. The linear correlations may no longer fit over time. So you might want to say something like that in your caveats. And then it's also limited, the relationship between cases and deaths are limited by the facts that were collected. So there is some controversy that they're not collecting the total number of deaths accurately, and they're certainly not collecting the number of cases accurately because of the limitations in the number of tests that are administered. So if you had more broad testing, you would have you would identify more cases, including those that were not as did not have as many symptoms and were less likely to result in deaths. So the relationship between the cases and number of deaths is obviously influenced by the collection method that Ontario is using to track cases. So you would want to include all of these in your final report that listed your findings and listed what the limitations are of your data set. So I would expect maybe, 4 or 5 sentences under each section here to include your conclusions and commentary. So anyway, once you get done with this, there really isn't a save button here. So anytime you insert something, it's automatically saved. However, remember last time we published our website. So even though there's not a save button, you have to publish the website once again. So when I click on publish, this window comes up that tries to give you a preview of for each of the um, pages that have been updated, what the new version will be versus what the current version will be. Assuming you are satisfied with everything, then you can click publish and it will publish a new version of the website. It still leaves me on the edited site, so if I click the drop down box next to publish, I could view the published site and notice that the URL changed. So I have my sites.google.com/view, and I can test the appearance of the site, make sure my charts are showing up at least somewhat respectable. I think I needed to publish the other sites as well. So if I close this and go back to publish, let me return to the editor, look at my other page. I don't know what happened to my second cases for, oh, that was just on the comparison. So on my home page, I had two charts. So in checking the site, I can view the published site. So publishing it publishes all the changed pages at once. So I would want to make sure that they all look okay and that my text came through okay. And when I'm finished, you really don't need this home and auth user, but make sure the entire first part of the address is copied. And then when you go to Canvas, well, I'm not going to log into Canvas because they're asking me for a push, but when I log into Canvas and I go to the submission button, I want to copy this and make sure that your URL has the entire site name up until the word home here. It would still work if you publish this whole thing as well. So that's fine. You can copy this. So anyway, I know I've been rambling here towards the end, so I'll let you go. Don't hesitate to email me if you have any questions about your analysis of the final project. You're not going to choose Ontario, I should mention. You're going to choose whatever state that you're interested in studying, and I hope you find something interesting in your analysis. Anyway, I've enjoyed teaching all of you this semester. Hope everybody is healthy, and I look forward to seeing you back in the fall. So thanks, everybody, and take care and goodbye.